All right, welcome to Body Language and Behavior specific to dogs. This is your first dog training with the AWLA, so we're going to go over a lot of basics with shelter context in mind, and we'll also start an introduction to training with our dogs so that you can be really set up for success and having positive interactions with the animals in our care. So let's get started. First, I would invite you to think about the environment that our dogs are in all day, every day while they are in our care. We do our best to make sure that we are providing the best possible care, that we're providing options to de stress, we're providing enrichment, but it's still a really tough time in these dogs' lives. There's a lot of uncertainty. There's a lot of loud noises, a lot of new smells, proximity to strangers and other dogs. It's just really, really tough for them. And ideally, everybody would be at this level of relaxed all the time, but we know that that's not possible. We do know that we can work toward this goal, though. So, unfortunately, for stress in dogs, a lot of the things that cause stress most commonly are very commonly found in the shelter. Confinement is a big one. New or recent separation from their family, new noises, new smells, proximity to other animals, particularly animals that they've never met before. Boredom is a really big one, and strangers. And strangers are the trickiest one probably because they have to meet a stranger in order to get out of the shelter, right? They have to meet a potential adopter who's never met them before. Stress can manifest in lots of different ways, just like it can for humans. On the sort of low energy side, we might see some hiding, some lethargy, some inappetence. On the higher energy side, we might see some stereotypic behaviors, which are just repetitive things you might notice that don't seem to serve a function. So, jumping up and down in their kennels, spinning in circles, biting their tails, vocalization, shallow or rapid breathing, excessive drooling. There's lots of different ways that stress can manifest. And it's really helpful to keep in mind, even when we have the best intentions, we can still do harm. So be thoughtful about how you are approaching an animal, and we'll talk a little bit more later in the presentation about how to kind of start off on a good foot with a dog that you're meeting for the first time, but avoid hovering them, avoid getting down and in their face, especially with pointy, scary things. And importantly, this is one thing that I think it's important to remind yourself constantly that shelter animals are not your personal pets. Even if you've worked with a dog several times before, don't assume too much familiarity each time you take that dog out of their kennel. Watch the dog in front of you and react to the dog in front of you without taking too much of your prior knowledge of that animal into account. Reading body language well and responding to it will keep you safe. It'll prevent you from getting bitten and scratched, and it's also going to help that dog avoid getting on a bite quarantine, which hopefully shortens their stay at the shelter, helps them stay more relaxed, and gets them adopted faster. So let's watch a quick video to just overview body language and behavior, and then we'll break down those pieces afterward.
Hey there! We dogs communicate a lot of information with our body movements and facial expressions. Sure, we might bark, yip, howl, or growl, but our main way of talking to you is through nonverbal signaling. That's why I want you to be one of those people who can communicate with animals by reading our body language. When we are just chillin', we put on our neutral and relaxed pose. Our ears are in their natural position. Mine are floppy, and hers stick up, but aren't perked forward when she's chillaxing. Our eyes are soft, and we aren't looking nervously in another direction, making the whites of our eyes show. We carry our tails in their natural state. Sure, dogs have a wide variety of tail types, but you'll learn what our tails communicate by watching them. When we catch some Z's, some dogs prefer to curl up, or stretch out, or even sleep in weird positions. Just like you, we don't like to be startled when we're sleeping. When we are happy to see you, we make our bodies wiggly and loose and wag our tails in a wide sweep back and forth at medium height. Some of us do a whole butt wiggle. When something gets our attention, we perk our ears forward and our pupils might dilate. Maybe you're holding a tennis ball or a treat for us. Our mouth might be a little open, but our mouth and tongue are relaxed, not tense. We might progress from slightly interested to alert and intense, and our ears and tails go up even further, and we might close our mouth, hold our breath. She gets excited too, but often feels a little bit worried. Notice how the hair on the back of the neck and tail start to get poofy. Have you ever had the hair on the back of your neck stand up? This can happen when something startles us or has us really excited or amped up and alert. Just like how we act when we're excited or interested, there are varying levels to how we act when we feel upset or anxious. An easy way to think of them is the 4 F's: fret or fidget, freeze, flight, fight. Think of these stages as survival-based reactions. It's no fun to be scared, especially when the people around us don't realize we're not okay and feeling nervous about something. So, if you see these signs, take a look around and see if you can figure out what is concerning us. At the fret or fidget stage, we might avoid eye contact and turn away, but not necessarily move away. We might lick our lips, or we might pant even when we're not hot. We might move slower than normal, like we are tiptoeing around, or we could be overly active. Our ears might start to go to the side or move back a little, and we might lift one of our front paws up. If our fear continues to escalate, our tail and ears go down. Our bodies become hunched and our brow wrinkles. Our mouth might pull back into a tight smile as we pant, or our lips might begin to close and press together. We might snatch treats from your hand really hard. This is because we're nervous. We don't mean to do it. We might even be so scared that we refuse treats or become so frightened that we freeze. Think of a deer in the headlights situation. Ears, tail, and head are down. This might make the whites of our eyes show more. We breathe rapidly, but we'll probably have a closed mouth. Some of us will even tremble in fear. Flight takes place when we try to escape a situation. We might try to scramble away quickly or slink away slowly with our tails tucked, ears back, and body hunched. If we are panting, our mouth is tight and our tongue will be tucked up tight in our mouth instead of hanging out like when we are hot. If our previous attempts at communication have not been received, we might have to speak even louder. This is when people often label us as a bad dog, but we're just trying to tell you we are afraid. At the fight stage, we might display defensive aggression. Our ears, tail, and body are lowered, and we pull our gums all the way back and show our teeth. We may warn audibly with vocal communication, such as a growl or deep bark. Sometimes dogs go unheard for so long that they learn offensive aggression. We lean forward, our ears and tail are up, and our body will look really stiff and rigid. Our eyes may look dark and have a set gaze. When we show our teeth, we pucker our lips so you can only see the front teeth. We might even lunge and bark. Please hear us before we get to this point. Don't ignore what we are trying to say. Now you know what we look like when we are relaxed, happy, alert, and excited, as well as how we might communicate fear through fret or fidget, freeze, flight, or fight. When you know what to look for, you'll realize just how much we say to people on a daily basis. Please listen to what we are saying and give us help when we need it.
So let's break that down a little bit more. As noted in the video, dogs talk to us with their eyes, ears, mouth, and tail, and even the position and movement of their whole torso. When we're looking at the whole body, and basically sort of the trunk, right? Content dogs are going to show loose and neutral body positions. What I mean by that is the muscles won't be overly flexed. You'll see a lot of lateral movement in their spine. So if you were looking from a bird's eye view straight down, at the dog, you would see curves to the spine as they're moving around. They're not holding that body so taut that their spine is super straight as they move. Play bows are generally a good sign. This is a good example of one here where the forearms and little doggy elbows are down on the ground, booty's high, and the tail is up, but not overly like high up and over the back. That can be a nice sign with this tail in the position that it is, that there's not too much arousal here. This is just kind of a goofy play position. Belly up can be relaxed. It can also be a signal of appeasement, which can mean, hey, I need a break. So you want to pay attention to that, because sometimes a dog who is belly up because of appeasement doesn't necessarily want you to rub their belly. This dog, I can tell he wants a belly rub because his face is neutral and almost kind of goofy with his tongue, hanging out on the side. Genitals are fully exposed here, and more importantly, the front paws are flopped out to the side. So he's not holding them tense, right? A dog who's on their back because of a tap out, where they are actually kind of asking for space, will have a lot more tension in the face, probably a closed mouth, and those front paws are going to be pretty tight. The genitals might still be exposed, but the front paws are going to be tight. When we're looking at a fearful dog, we'll start to see an arch in the spine right here. So that upward curve, kind of like a black cat on Halloween, and the tail typically follows that arch in a nice curve, a nice continuous curve. You'll also notice that his body weight is a little bit back on his back legs. Head is oriented down. And then kind of keep this picture, because the next picture of defensive aggression has some similarities but some key differences. So with defensive aggression, we're seeing still a crouched position. We're kind of muscles taut, muscles engaged, but the spine has elongated, tail is still down, weight is still back, and where the dog's head was down, it's now looking at the threat. So this is a sign that you've probably missed some fearful signals along the way, and please hear him now before things get even worse. And even worse would look like more of an offensive position. So offensive aggression is going to be more when they actively close distance with a threat, so their body weight will actually shift forward and they might even take steps toward the thing. With this pose, it could be considered offensive or defensive. It doesn't really matter. It's aggression and you should listen to it. So the body weight is more centered. Tail is actually straight out now, and the back is still straight, but we've got piloerection along the spine. Sometimes you'll even see piloerection along the base of the tail. It kind of depends on the dog and the level of arousal. And he's still looking that threat directly in the face, but his head is high now. And more on that body weight. So forward versus centered versus weight on the back legs. A dog with weight forward is not necessarily an aggressive dog. It's just a dog who's alert and very interested in what's going on in front of him. Probably before dropping his leash, you're going to want to do a little bit of work with him to reduce that arousal so that whatever he rushes up toward, that interaction goes well. But that's, for another day. Centered body weight, this is a content guy. He's just hanging out. He's not really particularly planning to move in any particular direction, toward a thing, away from a thing. And this backward movement here, this with the weight on the back legs, you can even see the beginnings of a little paw lift here. This is a fearful dog. He's asking for space from whatever is in front of him, and he would like to make that space. So with all of our dogs, dogs are a diverse species. There's a lot of different, what we call morphological differences across the species, and that's basically just differences in how dogs look. But a dog is a dog is a dog. This Pomeranian is the same species as this Basset Hound, as the same species as these Doberman Pinscher. These dogs are resulted from selective breeding over time. but they are still dogs. They still communicate the same way with their bodies. What happens though is different body adjustments, either through selective breeding or even through cosmetic adjustments in some cases, can alter your ability to read what they're trying to tell you. So a dog with floppy ears is probably moving his ear muscles in the same way that a dog with docked ears is, but it's going to look different. Same thing with a fluffy body. It's harder to tell if this dog is tensing up her muscles or if she's nice and loose and relaxed. So you have to take that context into mind. And you might find that you need to rely on other things. So if the ears are tripping you up on this basset hound, maybe we focus on his eyes, his mouth, his body position, his tail, right? It's just going to call on using all of those different tools in your toolbox. Speaking of eyes, what we like to see is a nice soft eye. And to operationalize soft eye a little bit, I'm going to use this picture right in the middle. So a soft eye includes a nice almond shape to the eyeball. And that happens because the muscles and the skin around the face are really relaxed. So you can see with this dog, she's not doing a lot to like move her ear position, furrow her brow, retract any muscles around her muzzle or jaw. Her face is just pretty relaxed, and that's accompanied by a nice relaxed eye shape. We can also see in this dog, so she has the black pupil in the middle, and the brown position here, this brown color is her iris. It's the same for human eyes. We have a pupil and an iris. The whites of the eyes are called the sclera. You can't see the sclera here. It's just her iris and her pupil appears appropriately dilated for light conditions. So as you probably know, our pupils dilate and constrict all the time to adjust to different lighting. They also dilate and constrict due to arousal. So when you see a dog with overly dilated pupils or overly constricted pupils, that might mean something behaviorally, but it also might mean that they just shifted from a dark room to a bright room. So you have to keep that context in mind. But more on pupil dilation later. Let's just focus on the relaxed position. So this is a relaxed almond-shaped eye. It might also be blinking a lot. Blinking is a really lovely affiliative behavior that dogs show us when they're feeling comfortable with us. So they'll blink a lot, sometimes an over-exaggerated blink. And you might even see a half-closed eye to really indicate comfort and relaxation. So now we're starting to see a little bit of pupil dilation. And I like these examples in particular because this kind of Aussie cattle, dog, whatever, has very light irises, the color of the eye. That is not the whites of his eyes. That is not the sclera. That's the iris. He just has very light ones. Just again, like humans do. Some humans have blue eyes or brown eyes. That piece doesn't change that there's also a white of the eye, that sclera around. So in each of these positions, we're seeing a little bit of pupil dilation, round pupil, and a little bit of an increased tension in the face. So we see some more furrowing of the brow as the ears rotate forward. We see a little bit of tension as the mouth closes and those ears rotate forward. Again, mouth closed and focused, ears rotated forward. That has an effect on the eye shape. So the eye shape is a little bit wider than it was with the nice relaxed almond. They might still be blinking. This doesn't necessarily mean that something bad is about to happen in this eye shape. It just means that they're alert. These are dogs that are probably like ready for training, ready to see what's next, ready to do whatever you want them to do. And then when we look at a more fearful dog, we see large eye shape and large pupils. The dog in this picture, it's kind of difficult to see the pupil dilation, but it is a good example of the eye shape. So it's almost completely round. And that happens because she's contracting her ears all the way back, right? So she's pulling that skin back to make those eyes really wide. We can see it with the puppies too. Here we've got a little bit of a brow furrow, which is partly due to fear and partly due to like puppies that have extra puppy skin. And then over here, this is where the whites of the eyes come back into play. So in this Dalmatian, we see the dilated pupil, we see a sliver of iris, and we see quite a bit of the sclera on both eyes. And it's just that one side, right? So what that means is that this dog is looking at something, but the rest of his face is pointing in a different direction. So his eyes and his nose are pointing in different directions. One could surmise that whatever he's looking at makes him so uncomfortable that he's not able to look at it with his full face. So we do typically see this as a sign of fear and anxiety in a dog. This is called whale eye, and the reason why it's called whale eye is kind of silly. It actually doesn't really have that much to do with fear, but someone decades ago coined this term after watching whales in the ocean as they watch a school of fish go by. So a whale is a really big animal. When they watch a school of fish, their body doesn't move, but their eyes track from left to right or right to left, so you can actually see the whites of the eyes as their eyes move, but their body stays still. And then we've got these hard eyes or the pinpoint pupil. So the opposite of a dilated pupil is a constricted or pinpoint pupil, where the pupil dilates in fear and arousal to kind of get more information, more visual information, more peripheral vision. The constricted pupil focuses right on what's in front of the animal. So you can see this here. As the ears push forward, the face tenses, the eyes get a little bit smaller, and the pupils constrict. And over here, you don't see the pupils so much, but you can see the hard eye contact. So the ears are actually forward and down, and we'll talk about ear position in a second. But we see a lot of tension in the face and that focus on whatever's in front of the dog. We define hard eye contact as not blinking or moving to change what they're looking at for more than 2 seconds. And if you have a dog look at you like this or like this for more than 2 seconds and you're in free contact with them, meaning there's nothing between you and that dog, I would take some steps to get behind a fence or somewhere else, or grab their leash, whatever you need to do. Okay, so ears. When we're looking at neutral and relaxed ears, those breed and cosmetic adjustments come back into play. So these dogs are both doing the same things with their ears, they just look different because they have different looking ears. What I'd like you to imagine when we're talking about ear position is if you touch the back of your ears, the point where the back of your ear connects to your head. Imagine, if you had dog ears, like that back point, how that might rotate around. So even if you have floppy ears, that back panel is still kind of rotating and contracting and moving around the same way. It just looks different because you might have more cartilage in the front that flops over, or you might have ears that pop up. So both of these dogs, the back panel of their ears is rotated a little bit forward, but with not a ton of muscle tension in the face. So this dog in particular is not doing a lot to like pull his ears up. They're just sort of at their neutral position. It's accompanied by a lot of smoothness in the forehead, really, really lovely soft eyes with neutral pupils. And same here. These dogs' ears, the dog ears over here, they're pricked up. We see a little bit of furrowed brow, but it's also accompanied with that relaxed jaw, mouth open, and soft eyes. This ear position, once you see it, you'll see it a lot in the shelter because this is something that a lot of our more stressed dogs do. It's a way of gaining additional information from the sides of them and from sometimes even a little bit behind them. So we call this airplane ear. This is when the ears are rotated toward the side and kind of flicked over. It helps them get more information from the sides. And then when we look at a little bit more of a aroused or potentially defensive aggressive position, so on the aggression side, that rotated to the side and down, and we actually saw that earlier with this guy, rotated to the side and down. forward and stiff. So the back panels of the ears are rotated forward, but rather than relaxed, they're stiff. And I like to compare this one with the slide from a couple seconds ago. So if you look at kind of the space between the inner portion of this ear and the inner portion of this ear, keep that in mind and compare it to how much space there is here. This is obviously a different dog, but you can see there's no tension here. He's not doing anything to retract his ears up and into the middle. And it's accompanied with that nice soft face, as opposed to here where we've got the constricted pupils, weights back, paws lifted, which is interesting. We see a little tiny bit of furrow, but just overall a lot of tension in the face. And then when the ears are rotated back and completely flattened, that is typically a sign of fear. You will often see on more like pit bull type dogs, they'll flip their ears back a lot as a sign of appeasement. So that's often accompanied with other affiliative behaviors. So this is another piece of just, don't worry too much about any one thing in a vacuum. You want to look at the whole picture. Talking about a dog's mouth. So relaxed mouths can look a couple of different ways. When dog mouths are open and relaxed, we'll often see the tongue kind of hanging out. The lips are long, but he's not really like doing a lot with his muzzle. He's not pulling his smile back. He's not bunching his muzzle up. He's just hanging out. His mouth is there. This is a submissive grin. Every once in a while, we get a dog in the shelter who does this, and it's really funny. It's just, I like to include a picture of it. You'll see some examples later of times where a dog retracts their muzzle to show their canines where it's not so cute. But again, we've got kind of closed eyes, not a ton of tension in the face. This is just kind of a weird thing that some of our dogs do. And then appeasing, this dog is black, so it's a little hard to see, but he's got closed lips and just completely relaxed face here. So your mouth can be closed or open and it can still indicate relaxation. What we're really looking for is tension in that jaw. Some things that behaviorally the dog might do with their mouth to indicate that something might be going on with their emotional state. Excessive panting, especially when it's not obviously really hot outside. Licking their lips, assuming they didn't just eat some peanut butter. Hypersalivation can also be a sign of extreme stress, or maybe that they're not even feeling well. So those are good things to check in on, and maybe check in with the vet team if you notice a lot of hypersalivation during an interaction with the dog. Okay, and then when we're moving into aggression, so I mentioned before, we'll see submissive grins, and then we'll see some different types of teeth displays. So these are some examples of an agonistic pucker, and the more colloquial term for that is a lumpy whisker bed. So if you're looking at the top half of this dog's jaw, the muzzle is really bunched up because he's actively retracting his lips to show you his teeth. And you can see it here as well. That's that active retraction. It's called an agonistic pucker or a lumpy whisker bed. But here we can see full tooth display. So all the incisors, the canines, we're seeing everything. In addition, on this dog in particular and this one, you'll see that the shape of the lips has shortened considerably. So if we look back at, let's see, where's a good one? This guy. The lips are nice and long. We often call this, the fancy word for this is a commissure. So it's the commissure is where the top lip and the bottom lip meet. So the commissure here is very long and relaxed versus this commissure that's pushed all the way forward. And you can even see that the tongue is retracting. So this is a pre-bite position. The dog's tongue is retracting to get out of the way so that he can bite you. We call that a C-shaped commissure because it looks kind of like a C. It's probably going to be accompanied by some snarling, maybe some rapid barking as well. We talked about the muzzle just a second ago. So an agonistic pucker, will often be accompanied by a tooth display right here, this little guy, versus a nice smooth muzzle that's usually accompanied by a relaxed mouth, and his tongue's even like lolling out on the side. So let's talk through some vocalizations. Dogs talk to us with their barks, and if you have a dog at home or if you've had, some experience with dogs over time, you know that they have different barks that mean different things. They might be seeking attention or seeking information from you. They might be hungry, stressed. They might just be saying hi. A growl can be indicative that they're annoyed, but also possibly frightened or even angry. So that's definitely something you want to listen to. Gurgles sound like growls, but they're a little bit higher pitched, and you can usually tell by the body language what's actually going on. And I actually have an example of a gurgle in just a second. And then a yowl or a howl, it could mean that the dog is in pain or in distress. It could also mean that they found a squirrel. So context, context, context. And this is a dog named Chance, who was in our care not too long ago. And he gurgled when he played. So as you listen to him, watch his body language as well.
Wow. One more time. Oh, you got it. You're too strong. Hey, can I see it?
So you can see he's pretty loose in his body. Every time I drop the toy, he's loosening right back up again. Eyes stay almond shaped the entire time. Smooth forehead. That is what a playful gurgle sounds like. Okay, moving right along. So our dogs talk to us with paws as well, and paw lifts can mean different things. You might see a relaxed paw lift, like this guy over here on the right. He's just saying like, hey, look how cute I am, versus a more fearful paw lift. And we can differentiate between the two by a couple of different things. So this dog's weight is still pretty well proportionally between the three legs that are on the ground. This dog's weight is more heavy on that back leg, right? He's kind of moving back, and the paw lift is probably a function of moving back away from whatever he's looking at. Here, this dog is looking directly at something. This one is showing some whale eye along with a dilated pupil. We've got a relaxed commissure here with a nice flat tongue versus a closed commissure with potentially a little bit of an agonistic pucker. Ears are forward and alert. Ears are back, right? So if we were to just look at this paw lift without zooming out to the entire dog, you might have some trouble discerning what's going on there, but by looking at the whole picture, you get a better sense. A paw lift can also mean, in a sporting dog context, that this is a concentration pose, right? Like he found the thing and his whole body is oriented toward the thing. Let's talk a little bit about tails. So a wagging tail does not mean that the dog is friendly. It doesn't not mean that the dog is friendly, but it's not the only. Dogs don't wag their tails only when they feel friendly. Dogs wag their tails as their arousal level increases or decreases. So we need to take into account the differences here. And in both of these pictures, I think you can see a very relaxed dog versus a very tense dog, right? Weight is planted, we're pretty still. We've got that pinpoint hard stare, ears are rotated forward, closed mouth, and the only thing moving in the picture is that tail. Versus this guy who's kind of got a loose gait to him, it appears, and neutral eyes. So a neutral tail is typically going to extend naturally from the spine. So that natural line out here. And different individuals will have a different tail carriage. So as you get to know an animal you're working with in the shelter, you might start to know like, oh, like this dog's tail carriage is naturally a little bit higher or lower, and you can adjust what the baseline looks like and then measure from there. But if we're talking at a species level, generally the tail extends straight out from the back, and then it'll move higher as arousal increases, lower as fear increases. So there could be a slight raise. This is a guy who's ready to play. Helicopter tail is when you see the dog going in full circle. Often this is something that you might see when you like come home from work at the end of the day and your dog is super psyched to see you. And then this puppuccino over here is just your public service reminder that sometimes tails are difficult to read. A fearful dog will do things, once again, to keep themselves small and less noticeable. So their tail might tuck very close to them. It might tuck all the way under them. You might also see a low tail, but not necessarily a tucked tail. And this is a sign of a dog who's concentrating super hard on something. So here, he's low to the ground because he's herding sheep. He's doing what he was bred to do. Whereas this guy, his tail is tucked and low. He's kind of leaning away from the thing. Faces down. Here again, we've got that tense mouth, tail tucked. He's actually leaning possibly against this fence, maybe trying to get on the other side of it if possible. And then a flagging tail, which this is a still picture, so it's not that great. But a flagging tail is going to be something where you see the dog mostly still and just that tail is moving in a short back and forth motion. This is a sign of increased arousal. It's also a sign that there might be some frustration building and you might need to think about ways that you can lower the temperature on the interaction you're having with that dog. A straight out tail, this little turkey. This is a content and relaxed dog. And when we see a dog on the offensive, maybe, in this picture, it looks like he's guarding a ball, that tail will be high over the back and just that little tip of the tail is going to be flicking back and forth. So I won't go too deep into these. You'll get the slides and you can kind of review them whenever you like. But this is just a full tail, ears, eyes, mouth, and posture read, all the way from relaxed to angry, ready to fight. So let's talk a little bit about what all of this behavior means, right? Just like humans, just like any other animal, our dog's behavior serves a function. And the three basic functions that can be boiled down, any behavior can be boiled down to these, are distance decreasing, distance increasing, and showing emotion. So when we're reading a behavior, when we're noticing, that the body weight is back or forward, the tail is wagging loosely, the tail is wagging clipped, we can take those things and put them all together to make an overall assessment of what's going on for that dog. When we're talking about distance decreasing behavior, it doesn't necessarily mean that the dog's ready to play, but it does mean that they would like to continue to engage with whatever they're behaving toward. And that's often going to be accompanied by a loose body and a curved spine, not an arched spine, but again, if you're looking at the dog from an aerial view, a curved spine rather than that stick straight spine. And they'll likely also lean into you from the side. So the side of their body will press into you rather than coming head on with a straight spine. Some things you might notice, play bows, submissive grins, muzzle nudges. Distance increasing behaviors are designed to communicate that they would like more space. So again, that doesn't necessarily mean aggression. Hopefully you're catching much more subtle signs that a dog would like space before you get to aggression, because that's going to overall help them learn that they don't have to growl at everybody because people will listen to them when they do something as simple as looking away briefly. But these are, again, so they're signs that the interaction is too intense. Their body's probably going to be pretty stiff and in alignment, which is, from the head to the tail, that spine is straight. Some examples, a head turn or a hard stare, agonistic pucker, and then again, showing emotion. So whether they're decreasing or increasing distance, your dog is also going to be showing emotion with their behavior. So an agonistic pucker, versus a head turn might be showing different gradients along the emotional scale, but they're both distance increasing behaviors, if that makes sense. And I did want to spend a little bit of time talking about aggression versus arousal, because aggression is something that comes up a lot in animal care and animal welfare, and especially with with respect to dogs, and it's often not discussed correctly, and it's often misunderstood. What aggression is a constellation of behaviors that communicate a challenge, threat, or intent to harm. They are almost always serving the function of increasing distance. So, this constellation of behaviors where you're looking at a dog and you see a tooth display, wide eyes, maybe lunging forward, maybe snapping their teeth. These are several different behaviors that, taken together, we can read as aggression. And those are also behaviors that are almost certainly serving the function for that dog of getting a scary thing away from them. Most aggression is fear-based, and I've seen some citations that up to 90% of aggression is fear-based. I haven't looked that deeply into that research, so I can't tell you how reliable that is, but it does feel in experience that is the case. And it's also really important to know that any dog can and will use aggression when they feel like they need space. If we listen to their whispers, we don't need to hear them yell. And by that, I mean that if we listen to a dog when they are politely and calmly asking for space, they don't have to try to bite us. And that's why we're here. That's why we're doing all this training today. What often gets conflated with aggression is a discussion of high arousal. So, arousal is something we deal with pretty regularly at the shelter because our dogs are often very stressed out and they don't have an outlet to get all of their big feelings out. So, that manifests in lots of different behaviors. And if you've ever, had a child who's maybe been cooped up all day and then they have a big meltdown in the afternoon because, I don't know, you didn't have the right color spoon for them when you set up their snack. It's not about the spoon, right? It's about a lot of stuff that's been piling up for them, and it can feel really frustrating for you in the moment, but you're going to have a better time of working with this behavior and working through it if you come to it from a compassionate place and understand what's going on with your kid, and in this case with our dogs. So again, arousal, it's all about strong emotions: fear, excitement, anger, stress, joy. You might notice an increase in respiration rate, heart rate. You'll probably notice pupil dilation. And the other way that I like to explain high arousal is kind of being out of your thinking brain. So when you are so elevated, whether it's so stressed and tense or even just like so excited and happy, there's a point where you can't answer questions that you know the answer to. So a dog who might have a really strong sit stay on cue, when they're amped up to 11, they can't necessarily do that for you, even though they know it. So it's a position where they're out of their thinking brain, they're not responding to known trained cues, and we need to help them come down. So arousal exists on a scale from low to high, and there's also a valence of arousal to consider, from negative to positive. So where we would like our dogs to be as much as possible is in a low positive arousal state. This is that calm, relaxed, serene dog. And actually, you can see, that's mine right here. Nice low arousal state. That doesn't mean that it's unhealthy for dogs to pop up into high arousal, into that really happy, elated, silly, goofy play, but we do want to see them coming down a lot. When arousal increases, whether it's for good or ill, it can do a lot to impact your dog's metabolic function, their sleep-wake cycle. It's chemicals in their brain that are getting out of whack. So we do want to make sure that we're regulating them back down to this low positive arousal whenever possible. Where trouble sets in is when we get into negative high arousal and negative low arousal. So when our dog is super, super excited and having a great time, it's easy for them to tip over into negative arousal if they get frustrated or confused in a moment where they're already really, really excited. And then this can cause some problem behaviors. Even if they don't mean aggression, it can still be dangerous. So they might start to snap at your clothes, they might start to bite at the leash, they might start to jump at you and nip at your hands. they're probably not trying to hurt you, but it doesn't mean that you can't get hurt. So we try to stay out of that position as much as possible. And then on the negative low arousal place, this is where those behaviors come out that, if presented in a human, we would probably categorize them as some form of depression. So that sadness, that inhabitance, lethargic behavior, seemingly bored behavior, we don't want to see this either. So these are guys that we target on our behavior team to really work through what's going on with them and try to get them to a better quality of life as soon as possible. So we do the best we can to not put you in a situation where you're handling a dog before you're ready. That's why we have this training plan in place for all of our volunteers and staff. However, things can change really quickly, and a dog who was totally fine this morning might not be totally fine this afternoon for any number of factors. So we do like you to have some ability to think on your feet and to know what to do and stay calm. When you are looking for signs of high arousal, we're looking at things like poor impulse control, low erection, we might see dilated pupils, we might see excessive panting. The behaviors we might start to see are barking and spinning, maybe stereotypic, maybe not. Biting, yanking the leash, jumping up on you. Muzzle punching is that closed or open mouth kind of nose punch to your chest or belly, which is not fun. And they might even mouth or bite you. So we definitely don't want that. What I can say is if you are in a position where a dog's arousal level is increasing and they are continuing to close distance with you, do not turn your back on the dog. This is some traditional wisdom that floats around, and I think it's still floating around, but do not do that. In that moment, I think the thought process behind turning your back, why this often comes up, is that you think you're like teaching the dog that you're going to ignore them. But what often happens with the highly aroused dogs, when you turn your back on them, they either get more aroused and even tip into aggression because they're frustrated with you. They turn around and come at you the other way. Best case scenario, all you do is turn your back, but now you can't see what that dog is doing, right? So what I would recommend that you do instead is slowly move toward a space where you can get on the other side of a gate while keeping your front to the dog. So that may mean that you're taking a step backward, tossing some food, taking another step backward, tossing some food, taking your time. And by the time that you're working with animals, you're going to be set up with a radio, so you can radio for help if you need it, and somebody will come running. And I already kind of talked through this, but toss your treats away from you, maintain your calming body language, and I really recommend not talking to the dog. You're probably just adding a lot of additional information that they can't process by adding your own voice. So if you can get to another side of a fence or maybe step on their leash, regain control of their leash and hold it out with a straight arm, use your radio and call for help. And again, this will not be, for a minute. You'll still go through some additional training before you're handling dogs, but we want you to be set up for success. Displacement is another really common thing. And I just realized this is sort of an abrupt tonal shift, but displacement is something we see in the shelter quite a bit, and it can be defined as any out-of-context behavior that a dog uses as a coping mechanism. It can be healthy or unhealthy. Most of them are actually pretty healthy, and they're things that they learn to do on their own. So you might see a dog shake off, just that full body shake. You might see them take a second to sniff in a different direction. You might see them look away from something, lip lick, yawn, or scratch. The key is that these things are only displacement if they're out of context. So if the dog just is walking along a path and stops and shakes off out of nowhere, he didn't just get out of the bath, he didn't roll in something, that shake off is probably displacement. Sniffing, the same thing. So if he sees another dog and is like, oh, actually I just need to go smell this leaf over here, that's kind of weird. It's probably displacement. And what displacement does, the function of it is to help your dog kind of get an extra second to collect themselves and figure out what they would like to do in a certain situation. I like to describe displacement in a human context as if you're ever in an elevator with people you don't know and suddenly like the zipper on your hoodie becomes very interesting and you're kind of fiddling with that a little bit. Maybe you check your phone 4 times before you get off the elevator. It's just kind of like anything to take you out of being in this closed small space with strangers. That's displacement. Okay, resource guarding is another big thing. Resource guarding is pretty common and it can happen with any kind of item, but essentially the dog will guard something that they feel is valuable from you. And that might be with aggressive posturing. So you might notice a couple of things, like maybe they actually physically block you from taking the item, cover it with their paws, lean over the item. They might start to eat. If it's a food-based item, they might start to eat it more quickly as you approach. Their body might freeze. They might give you a hard stare or a whale eye, and that could progress even to biting. So it's really important to take this seriously. With resource guarding, we don't really train them out of resource guarding, especially in the shelter, because it manifests from stress. They're dealing with so much stress in the shelter. It's usually best to just manage the behavior, and in most cases, it'll either go away in the home or it'll be easily managed in the home as well. So we don't typically spend a lot of training resources on resource guarding. What we do is take items away from our dogs safely. So first of all, I would say if the item that they have is safe for them to have, let them have it. Don't take it away from them, just let them have the thing. If we need to take something away from them that is unsafe, maybe we're worried that they're going to ingest a foreign object, or maybe they're eating a chocolate bar, whatever it might be, exchange something for that item. And you can do that by tossing some high value food, maybe some hot dogs, or like canned cat food is really usually a good high value item for dogs. Tossing that away from the item that they are guarding. And when they go to pick up the item, the things that you tossed, get the guarded item out of the way. So the other thing to keep in mind here is because dogs can guard anything, and because behavior happens quickly, and because we don't always know what they're going to guard, it means that we really need to be on our toes anytime we're interacting with a dog, especially if we're encroaching in their space for any reason. Be mindful of what items are around them and try not to hover over anything. It's a good rule of thumb to just assume that the dog will guard anything no matter what it is. Okay, so we're gonna watch a video with a bite in it. The bite is not bloody, it happens really fast, but I want you to see how quickly behavior can change. And because you've had so much knowledge already given to you in this training, you should be able to notice a lot of the warning signs that this dog gives. But this video is why we do this training.
Especially happy to meet you after your story yesterday. He's a Mastiff, right?
He's a Dogo Argentine.
Okay.
So he's an Argentinian Mastiff.
Okay. You're gorgeous. Oh, I'm so glad you're okay. You too. Thank goodness for you.
Yeah.
Gosh, have a great weekend.
Thank you.
Happy Valentine's Day.
Oh.
Oh my God. Very.
Okay.
So take a collective deep breath.
Okay.
All right. So some of the things we notice about that video that might not come to immediate mind. One, this is taking place on a TV set, so there's probably a lot of lights. There are probably a ton of people in that area, like all around, kind of hovering. The man handling the dog has a very, very tight grip on that dog's collar, so he has nowhere to go. We see lots of signals from this dog as the woman is leaning in to pet him. He's licking his lips. He's trying to lean away from her. He actually does that multiple times, but he can't move because the person is holding him too tightly. And then he goes for that snap, and you actually see the whites of his teeth. You see that tooth display for about a half second before he snaps in her face. So we don't want that to happen for you. But we do have dogs in our care on the regular who are that stressed out, and you won't be put in a position to handle those dogs before you're ready for them, but it doesn't mean that you can't be aware and practice right now. So let's do a little bit of practice with all the skills that we've just learned. And what we're going to do with each picture, I'm going to be quiet for about 5 seconds, and you can pause your video if you'd like to. Name all of the things that you see in this video, or in this picture, excuse me, and then put those behaviors together in a constellation that tells you what you think is going on for this dog. So I'll be quiet, pause your video, and I'll come back in a few seconds. Okay, welcome back. So what I see in this picture, the first thing that I notice is a paw over the toy. He's lying down, but his legs are kind of ready to spring back up if he needs to. He's not in a really like relaxed lying down position. His mouth is open and his tongue is out. He has neutral eye position, but a tiny bit of whale eye, and his ears are back. So that's a lot of conflicting body language, right? And I think this is really similar to a lot of things that you'll see in shelter. That's one of the reasons why I chose this picture, because it is conflicted. And think about the last time that you felt one emotion at a time, right? We're almost always feeling multiple things at multiple times. My read on this picture is that this dog is a little bit concerned that the person taking the photo might take the toy away, not concerned to the point that they're showing aggression, and they're also affiliative with that person. But if the person continues to step closer to the toy, he's ready to pick it up and move away from him. All right, next one. I'll be back in a few seconds. Okay, so here I see a closed mouth, pinned back ears, tension in the face, neutral eyes. My guess is that this dog is tolerating this interaction, but probably does not want to be smothered and kissed on either side and held so tightly. Okay. All right, so this is a happy little guy. He's got a stick. His tongue is raised a little bit, which could be indicative of a retraction of the tongue to get ready for a bite. But when you take into context that he has a stick in his mouth, that makes a lot more sense. His muzzle's relaxed. We're not seeing any tooth display on the top canines or incisors. We're just seeing those bottom teeth because his mouth is open. Soft, squinty eyes. Ears are neutral and forward. This is a relaxed, happy dog. All right. So I see a tail very close to the body, kind of a curved and compressed spine, pushing all the way into the back of the space up against the wall. Ears are down. We see whale eye. We see a dilated pupil. We see some tension in the face and mouth. This is a very fearful dog. Okay, I don't think I talked about this, so I will now, but we see a tongue flick here, and a tongue flick can be a sign of a dog who's a little bit fearful and trying to get more information. Dogs actually have a gland it's like on their soft palate, and when they flick their tongue out, they can gain more scent information with that gland. So you'll see them do that when they're a little bit fearful. But we've got the tongue flick, we've got very dilated pupils, very round eye shape, and the ears are fully back. This is a fearful dog. Okay, I'll give you a couple more seconds for this one. So we've got two dogs here. Kaiser is the white and brown dog in the foreground, and Tanner is the brown dog in the background. So starting with Kaiser first, he's sitting and kind of leaning into Tanner. We've got that open mouth with the lower canines, but relaxed muzzle, flat tongue. Ears are back, and remember we talked about how that can sometimes be an appeasement sign when you take into context the rest of the body language. Eyes are soft. Tanner here has a bit of a curved spine. Tail looks like it's out a bit, probably neutral with the back. He's sniffing Kaiser. He's got soft eyes with neutral pupils, and his ears are sort of maybe a little bit back. These are two friends playing together. Okay. So here we have a smaller dog. She's sitting with her weight all the way back against the edge of the chair. Ears are forward, furrowed brow, round pupils, round eyes, closed mouth with maybe the tiniest little bit of a pucker. This is a fearful dog. Okay, so then the question is, what do you do with all of this information that you now have? And the answer is using your own body to speak dog. This is going to go a long way, and then you'll also start to get some skills on board throughout the remaining trainings on how to build further trust and rapport using positive reinforcement techniques. So this is a quick video of Joe, who, if you haven't met him yet, he's a taller guy, and he's really good about using his body in space to work with a fearful dog, and you'll kind of see how he makes adjustments in this video. Sydney is the dog in the video, and she spent roughly 2 months too fearful to leave her kennel, and this was one of the first sessions that we had with her in a yard with an enriched environment. So really quick, but even just kneeling down and letting them move away from you can go a long way. And there are other things you can do to make a good first impression. So if you have to talk to the dog at all, talk very softly. I recommend not talking to them at all, especially with a fearful dog. Be really aware of your body posture and how much you're leaning over them. So this is from a vaccine clinic. This is a puppy who was really fearful to step on the scale, and she needed to get weighed in order to get some flea and tick. So you'll see I'm kneeling down, but I'm not kneeling over her. I'm kind of keeping my shoulder and my knee in line here. And I'm letting her choose to get on the scale. I'm not just pushing her, I'm not talking to her, I'm just feeding some treats onto the scale. Other things you can do, bring your hand from underneath to feed the dog rather than bringing your hand up and over. Move slowly, so be really thoughtful about where you're moving your body and how fast you're moving your body. You can give them some exaggerated blinks, looking away from them, maybe giving an exaggerated yawn and then looking away. These are all really lovely ways to build early rapport with the dog who's a little bit unsure about you. As far as training goes, we use positive reinforcement and some classical conditioning techniques as well for training at the AWLA. So positive reinforcement, put simply, is we add good stuff to the environment to encourage future behavior. Basic example, if a dog sits, we give them a treat. Over time, the dog offers more sits because they know that doing that will get them a treat. Classical conditioning is something that we use to our advantage. It's actually a phenomenon that's happening all the time, but I won't get into that here. We use it to our advantage, though, when we're trying to shape a calmer or maybe a more positive response to a dog, for a dog to a person. So through classical conditioning, the learner learns that one thing predicts another over several repetitions. For example, every time I pass a kennel, I give the dog a treat. Over time, the dog starts to pair my approach to the kennel with something yummy, and they begin to perk up and come to the front of their kennel when I walk by. When we're doing positive reinforcement, we often use a clicker, and you can see it pictured here. You'll hear it referred to as a marker as well. A clicker is a type of marker. So marker training helps the animal understand exactly what they just did that earned them reinforcement, and it's a really, really great way to clarify training, minimize frustration for the learner, and have a lot of fun. We like to use clickers at the shelter because the button sound that the click makes, it's the same no matter who's pushing the button. Whether it's a tall man or a short woman or anywhere in between, the clicker sounds the same. It doesn't matter if you speak Spanish or English. It doesn't matter if your voice is high or low. The click sounds the same. So it's less confusing for the dogs when they're working with multiple people over time, when they're always working toward that click. I have a clicker near me, but I'm actually not going to use it right now because my dog is awake and he will expect food that I don't have on me in this moment. So I'm not going to click, but it makes a little metallic click sound. And we can use it for classical conditioning. We can use it for positive reinforcement training. We can use it for all kinds of things. First, though, we have to teach the dog what the click means, because ideally the first time they hear it, it's a completely neutral sound. So we have to pair it with good things over time. We pair it with tasty chicken or tasty hot dogs, tasty cheese, whatever. And essentially it's just a few rounds of click, feed, click, feed, click, feed. And then you'd be surprised after like 5 or 6 rounds, the dog starts to realize that when that sound comes, they'll turn their head to you and expect the click. And that's when you know that you've effectively charged the clicker, and you can start to use that click to drive behavior. So some rules with clickers to keep them effective: always, always, always feed a treat after you click, even if it was an accidental click. That's okay, just feed them. The treat should follow after the click, not at the same time, but not before, and it should be about 3 seconds after the click. So if you think click, 1, 1000, 2, 1000, 3, 1000, treat, that's a good amount of time for you to get the treat out of your treat bag or your pocket and to the dog. And that doesn't mean that it becomes less effective if every now and then it takes you 5 seconds, or if every now and then you do it in 2 seconds. But that 3-second mark is about what you want to work for, and it's going to help keep your mechanical skills really clean. It's really important that the click happens and then the treat happens, so that they're not confusing the two and mixing up what predicts what. We always want them to know that the click predicts the treat and not the other way around. Your dog might be scared of a clicker. It might be too loud for them. It might just be too weird of a sound. We can always course correct. There are some things we can do by like muffling the clicker, putting it in our pocket. Sometimes I just switch to using a verbal marker. I'll just say the word yes or good instead, and that can work really well. We usually start with the clicker as the gold standard because it's just so consistent, and it's consistent across users. If you want to show enthusiasm, like say your dog just had a breakthrough training moment, we increase the number or the quality of the food we're offering, but we only ever click once. So if your dog gets up and does a cartwheel out of nowhere, you're not going to go click, 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 click. You go click, and then you throw a party with treats. You can click for anything, doesn't have to be fancy. Anything that you see that you like your dog doing and that you'd like for them to do it again, click it and treat it. And think through things that are going to help them get adopted, right? I once shaped a head tilt behavior from a really cute dog who was offering that a lot. So I clicked and treated the hell out of that, and it actually did help her get adopted because she was just so cute. She would walk in and do her little head tilt. You are going to mess up. Clicker training, it takes a second to get used to, but it's really not that hard, and it's a lot of fun. Don't be hard on yourself. The dogs are resilient, and you are too, and practice makes better. So here are a couple of games that we can play with our dogs You're not going to be at a point yet where you're taking dogs out of their kennels. We want a little bit more training on board before we do that, but you can start to interact with them now by playing training games. And these are really, really good for them. It helps them shape calmer behaviors. It helps them, in some cases, change a negative or neutral conditioned emotional response to a positive one, particularly when people are walking by their kennels. And it helps them use their brain, get a mental workout, and learn some skills. So the first one is drive-bys. We don't typically use a clicker for drive-bys because we're focusing on shaping an emotional response, not building a behavior. And for drive-bys, all we do is walk through the kennel and toss food into the kennels. It does not matter what behavior the dog is offering. So think of the possibilities. This is a game that you could play in between loads of laundry when there's a lull in your work. Just do a couple of rounds of drive-bys, and it can make a really, really big difference in the lives of our animals. Oops. Come on, slide. Here we go. Quiet kennels is sort of the next step up. In this game, it takes drive-bys just a half step up. So we're using a marker for this game because we're moving beyond shaping emotional response and we're shaping a behavior instead, and particularly calm and quiet behavior. So in most cases, that's going to mean some version of 4 paws on the ground and not barking. But it could be that the dog is on their bed. Sometimes, depending on the dog and their needs, I'm not going to really enforce the 4 paws on the ground if they're not barking, or vice versa. As you play and as you get to know the individuals, you might change up your criteria for quiet kennels. But in this game, we walk through and we mark and reinforce, or we click and reinforce any calm and quiet choice that the dog makes up and down the kennels. And it keeps the kennels really nice and quiet. Okay, Treat Retreat is another great game that you can play through the kennel with a fearful dog. In this game, you can use a marker. It doesn't really make sense to, because what we're using here is building the dog's confidence to consent to the interaction. And how we do that is I'm going to be sitting on the other side of the fence. You can actually play this in free contact as well, but I'm playing this on the other side of a fence because this dog doesn't want me on the same side of a fence as him. And I'm tossing treats kind of far away behind him. And then each time he goes to eat the treat, when he orients back to me and kind of resets his position, I toss a treat to that position. And then after a few rounds of that, I toss more behind him. So each time he's choosing where he wants to be, how close he wants to be to me. I'm never using the food to lure him to come closer to me. And that's really important. It has to be his choice where he wants to be. And if he wants to play the whole game at the back of the kennel, that is totally fine. I forgot to mention in that video, I did a couple of rounds of feeding the other dogs in the other kennels because they were getting frustrated. So if you saw my hand go in weird ways, that's what I was doing. Here we go. Okay. One other game you can play is shaping eye contact. So we use a marker for this one because we're shaping a behavior where we want the dog to orient to us. You might not get perfect eye contact because it's actually kind of stressful for a dog, but eye contact doesn't come naturally to dogs, and it can be a really helpful thing for helping them get adopted if they are willing to look at an adopter. So we're playing this here, and one of the pieces to capturing eye contact and making it a little bit lower stress is rather than hand feeding each treat through the gate, I'd love for you to toss the treat onto the ground because that directs the dog's head down and then lets them choose to look up to you when they're ready. All right. Target training is also fun. We have target sticks in the shelter, and you can even use the palm of your hand and do this through the fence.
Hey guys, today we're going to talk to you about targeting. So here in the shelter we use a target stick, and what we're doing with it is for the dogs, the cats, and actually as we saw with turtles too, we want the animals to touch the target stick with their nose. As soon as that happens, we click, we treat. Why do we do that? Well, first of all, it's a nice fun thing to do for them, gives them something to do, but what we get out of this is we can actually, when the dog or the animal knows how to do it, use it for moving them through the shelter, by getting them through doors, just tell them to touch, they walk through the door. If they need to be weighed, get them on the scale. It can be used as a recall when the dog is coming like touch, they will come and touch, and it will also help us to teach them nice tricks like spin, lay down, sit, whatever comes to mind. So for us volunteers, we're mostly going to use it also to get the dogs to the front of their kennel quietly when adopters want to see them. Like shy, fearful dogs or high energetic dogs tend to be either really jumpy or just hide in a corner. They're going to know what's happening. They're going to come quietly. The adopter will be like, oh, that's a nice dog, because they're not all over the place, and that's going to help the dog to get adopted. So what you want to do, you want to hold out the stick, dog touches, we click, and dog walks away. And we treat. So you will encounter some dogs who might be a little fearful of the stick or like retreat or anything. So if you see that the dog is aversive to the stick, or even you can use your hand, but if the dog moves back, it's possible that there's just animals who are not into this. So don't push it. Just go to find it, and find it would be a good game for them to play probably because it doesn't approach their head or their face, so they're more comfortable. So the targeting is a great enrichment exercise for the dogs, and it also will help you to build up your skills, like the clicking skills. It's easy. He touches, you click. So you can definitely practice your timing for that, and in the same time, our animals would have great enrichment out of it.
So to wrap up, with everything in mind, just remember that you have a lot of power as a volunteer, as a staff person, over these animals. And with great power comes great responsibility. These dogs deserve the absolute best effort from all of us, and they're depending on you to help them feel safe. So do your best to ask questions when you have questions. There are staff all over the place that can chat with you if you need more guidance on any one particular thing. And yeah, have fun with our dogs.